Hello there, I am the Modern Druid, and welcome to this 10th, and normally final, concept of the delirium. Here, we will discuss a consequence of the theory of the hypomnesic transindividuation systems of reference, the H-stir, and we will introduce the concept of GIR, to designate the idea of general institutions reform. We mentioned in previous episodes that a system of transindividuation becomes referential, or hegemonic, because its uses imply the formation of institutions. That is to say that an H-stir requires the formation of institutions to enable its functioning, such as learning systems and schools. And as a result, society organizes and structures itself around the specific H-stir. For example, handwritten alphabetic writing is operational in ancient Greece and Athenian democracy because all citizens involved learn to read and write and can consult the laws, which in turn structure society. More recently, with printed alphabetic writing, the press emerged, transforming the relationship to time, space, and knowledge. We observe that each hypomnesic technical system corresponds to a societal or political organization, structured by institutions. And we hypothesize that each technical system of transindividuation produces an epoch. In other words, each epoch are shaped by their means of transindividuation. At this point, we cross a Bernard Stiegler's theory of the doubling of the epoch, which is based on the theory developed by the French historian Bertrand Gilles concerning technical systems. According to this thesis, a new epoch always emerges in two stages. First, a new technique or technology appears, a technique that is not adapted to the society in which it appears, and that destabilizes the organization of these society. Destabilization is the first phase of an epochal doubling. But then, sociological innovations intervene, which take the new technique or technology into account and invent uses for it. This is the second phase of epochal doubling, the adoption of the technical changes, thanks to sociological innovations. In other words, new technologies appear first. It is the first phase of the epochal doubling, destabilization. And after, institutions are produced that condition its uses and reinforce them. It is the second phase of the epochal doubling. And we think here that a technology becomes hegemonic, or referential, because of its institutionalization. That is, organizations appear, are transmitted, and regulate the uses of technology and reinforce themselves. Here, we should study the relationships between writing and the organization of the first Sumerian city-states. Writing, inventory and slave management, and royal power. Closer to us, the emergence of printed writing certainly involved many institutions, particularly the university. Following these reflections, it appears to us that we, in 2025, would be in such an in-between period. That is to say, we would still live with institutions that were formed in the H-stir of the printed book. Schools, universities, political institutions are based on printed text. But since 1993, we have been using the interconnected Internet network and the series of software programs called the web as our technical hypomnesic system. Our technologies are more and more those of a digitized society. But our institutions are still those of the previous system, that is, the system of the printed book society. Digital technologies are suspending all ancient social programs, and we do not yet have the social organization adapted to those technologies. We can cite as an example ChatGPT, and those students who manage to copy and paste homework in 5 minutes, without opening a book. But all domain of life are impacted. The digitization of society is perhaps particularly traumatic because it is quite rapid and instills itself in all areas of existence. We therefore find ourselves with a general suspension of institutional programs, and that's why we're trying to talk here about the RGI, the General Review of Institutions. We have a new technical system. We need to create the institutions that will allow us to adopt it. General institutional reform would be a program that would attempt to take into account this epochal suspension caused by the digitalization of society, and to provide a response to it. We need to document the second phase of the epochal doubling in order to shed light on it. Ultimately, the concepts we are trying to produce here serve this purpose: to offer those who have the power, the conceptual tools, the concepts, to think about the future of this technical change. For example, we consider here that we were in the hypomnesic system based on printed writing. This H-style of printed writing ensures power to the class that knows how to read and write. That is to say, to the bourgeois elite. And the current university system is actually a system of selection and formation of those who will know how to conform and become part of this ruling elite. In other words, the current university system maintains the system of social domination of the bourgeois class. If we agree with this, and if we also agree with the fact that we are entering the era of the digitization of society, which is causing a widespread bourgeoisification, that is, giving access to the greatest number of people to the cultural practices of the bourgeoisie, then we can suggest that the future university system should encourage this process of bourgeoisification and become a vast system of popular education, which would offer all citizens the means to inform and document themselves on small and large matters. According to our thesis of general bourgeoisification, we would be moving towards a system of direct governance of the population, a direct democracy, which requires excellent information for the population that would be in charge of decision-making power. The university, in the digitalized society, should be the organization in charge of training and informing the decision-making class, namely, everybody. Transforming universities into a vast system of popular education would also have the task of moving us from what we called media profusion to cultural profusion. This is an example of the transformations that our institutions need to undergo if they want to be, according to these theories, in line with the new hypomnesic system of transindividuation. However, the digitalization of society is disrupting every area of our lives, and the general overhaul of institutions is a rather dizzying program, which would also require us to consider power, family, money, international relations, etc. We will try to continue these reflections. Perhaps we will deliver results in the future. If this program interests you, please feel free to critique it, support it with your comments, or contribute to it yourself if you have ideas. In the comments, for example, or by email. As they say, there's always more in two heads than in one. As for me, the modern druid, I thank you for your patience, for listening to this to the end. And may the great complexity of the world inspire you.